All right, so at this moment, we're going to talk about the interwar period. You should be taking notes, listening, take way more notes than the bullet points. Pause, write down what I'm saying. But anyways, and then go and make sure you do any classwork or homework that's due by the next class. But when we talk about the interwar period, we're talking about the time period between World War One and World War Two. So let's recap. World War One ended with the Allies winning and defeating the Central Powers. Germany is right here. The Kaiser had to step down. They created a Weimar Republic, so it was forced to take a democratic and form a democratic government. And the Ottoman empires are weakened. Austro-Hungary is extremely weakened. They have to do away with their or they're divided and they have to do away with their dictatorial rule. And Russia withdrew from World War One early, and so they lose a lot of territory. And so, like, see all this blue territory? That's all the territory that Russia lost after World War One. And Germany is now smaller and weaker. And so a lot of these big empires are now over. The age of empires, what we call it, is over. But they're going to try. Germany's going to try to make Germany a third empire and try to do it all over again in World War II. But anyways, after World War One, a lot of these fallen empires are going to be forced to create democratic governments. But the problem with democracy is it's very tricky. It's very hard to control the people if everyone has a voice and everyone has a say. And what we're going to see during the interwar period is the Great Depression. And after the Great Depression, a lot of people are they gave democracy a try, but they didn't have the traditions and they didn't have the experience using democracy. So they're going to give up on it pretty quickly. And a lot of these newer democracies are going to turn to dictatorships again after the Great Depression. They just think it's easier to control the people, to centralize the economy, to deal with Great Depressions, rather than using a democracy. And so we're going to see lots of these countries turn to dictators, and we're going to see Germany go back to a dictatorship after the Great Depression during this time period. But first, let's talk about the Great Depression a little bit. Oh yeah, Ireland. Do we have a map? No. So when we say England, we're talking about the island. When we say Great Britain, we're talking about a combination of, let me just look it up. Who makes up Great Britain? England, Scotland, and Wales, and Northern Ireland makes up Great Britain. I like this picture. So England is right here, Scotland, Wales, and Northern Ireland. Southern Ireland during this time period in the interwar period gains its independence. So we usually just call Southern Ireland, Ireland, and Northern Ireland we make sure we include the northern part to it. But anyways, there was a big Labour Party, and they fight for their independence. They're very socialistic, and they want their independence. So let's go back. Where were we? The Labour Party fights for their independence of Southern Ireland. Make sure you put Southern Ireland. All right, so other than that, now we have Great Britain, but Great Britain does not have Southern Ireland. They create a democracy over there. Let's talk about Germany. Germany under the Weimar Republic. The Weimar Republic is Germany's democratic government after World War I. Make sure you write that down. Weimar Republic. A republic is a representative government. So it is the democratic government after World War I that they're forced to create. After World War I, Germany is extremely weakened. If you remember, Germany had to pay the Allies all these reparations. It was so they're in a ton of debt, and they're trying to rebuild after World War I. There was a lot of destruction. And they're going to face economic disaster after World War I. And this is even before the Great Depression in Germany. First of all is inflation. So When the Allies forced Germany to pay very harsh reparations, the cost of war, um, what Germany did is they just printed a lot more money. And when you print a ton more paper money, every single $10 bill that you have, or every single $1 bill, we can even simplify, is now worth less than it did before. The more you have of something, the less it's worth. So in order to pay all these loans, they just printed all this money to be like, here's our money. But that's not really how it works. You can't really do that. And so inflation, you got to know what inflation is. It's the decrease in value of your money, of your currency. So if you look over here, January 1919, $1 is 8.9 marks. So I think around this time period, 1 mark, that is their, similar to their dollar, 1 mark could buy you a loaf of bread. By 1923, 1 loaf of bread costs like $1 billion marks. I mean, their money was practically worthless. They would have to put all of their money in wheelbarrows to buy 1 piece of bread. It was insane. So, the results of this is anyone who had any savings, like they were saving to buy a house, now their money is worthless. All of that money that they had saving to buy a house, now they can only afford them a loaf of bread for that night. So, the salaries, they're not keeping pace, and Germany is just going to become extremely weakened from this. What we're going to see is the Dawes Plan come in. The Dawes Plan is named after a financier from the United States. And he wanted to help give Germany loans to help rebuild their economy and stabilize their economy. And they set forth a much better schedule to repay the reparations that was more realistic. And so let's see. So the Allies, the United States gave Germany's down here, 2.5 billion in loans. Germany gave 2 billion in reparations to the Allies, which then gave 2.6 billion in war debt payment. So it's kind of like this big circle. So Germany could have some extra money to reinvest in their economy while also paying these war loans, instead of just having to reprint a bunch of money. And so it did slow down inflation. It did help. And by, the late 1920s, Germany was back to producing and industrializing the same amount of production as before World War I. So it really was getting better with the help of all these American loans. But all of that kind of gets ruined when the American economy hits the Great Depression. So if Germany is depending on American loans to rebuild, and then America goes into a Great Depression and no longer is giving out loans and is now coming back to Germany to say, hey, where's our money that we loaned you? It's going to lead to another massive collapse of the German economy as well. Economies are interconnected. So if one is massively hurt, especially the most powerful one, like the United States, it's going to affect other countries too. So the causes of the Great Depression. One of the big ones is overproduction. Let me see. Okay. Is overproduction. Overproduction, you guys know what that means, is you're producing too much. We're having these machines on these farms producing so much food, not just in the United States, but now that industrialization and the agricultural revolution is spreading to all over the world, to Latin America, to Australia. So everyone is producing so much food, which is great, but it's almost too much food. It's too much. People don't need this much food. And so what happens is whenever you produce more, what happens to the price? You decrease the price. That's great, but if you decrease the price too much, are you able to make a profit? So just imagine having a lemonade stand, right? And you start to make so much lemonade that you can decrease the price. But if you have to decrease your price for competition reasons, right? Everyone's prices are so low. If you increase your price, no one's going to buy from you because they can buy from someone else for cheaper. But if everyone does that, and say you're selling lemonade for only a penny, like a cup of lemonade, you're still, if that's the prices, like you can't, you're not going to make any profit if the prices are that low. The cost of production is not going to, it's going to be greater than your profit. And so we're going to see a lot of farmers not be able to pay back their loans on these big pieces of equipment like tractors. Like a tractor, one of those big commercial tractors is like worth more than someone's house, but it's worth it because it helps them produce a lot of stuff. So they're taking out these loans from these banks, and yet there's overproduction. They're going out of business. They can't pay back their loans. We're also going to talk about credit. So credit is loans. One second. All right. Credit is loans, and specifically I want you guys to write well, how do I explain this? So you know what a credit card is. Everyone knows what a credit card is. I have a credit card. When I go to the bank, a credit is different than debit. If you get a debit card, which you might when you're your age, maybe a little bit later, and you use your debit card, that money's coming straight out of your bank account. When I go to the grocery store and I use my credit card, I am buying those groceries using someone else's money. And then every month I have to pay back what I just borrowed. And if I don't, sometimes I don't, there's like a minimum payment. It's like $25 or something every month. I won't default, but now I'm in debt, so I usually almost pay it all back anyways. But a credit is a loan. And at this point in time, the stock market is just making so much money. It's getting extremely high. What you do with stocks is you buy a little piece of the company, and when the stock goes up and it's worth more, you sell it, and the difference is the profit. And people just thought this was easy money. And if you didn't have a lot of, like, you just throw in a little bit of money and it makes you like 10 times more in a couple months. So what people were doing is they were borrowing a lot of money, investing it in the stock market, hoping to make so much money, a huge profit, and then they could pay off their loans super fast. Well, the thing is the stock market, if you're not investing for the long term, you're practically gambling. Just think about it as poker, right? If you're playing poker with someone, you should only bet what you can afford to lose. But at this point in time, everyone's betting all of this money, and that money that they're betting is a loan. So when they lose, not only did they lose all their money, but now they're in debt and they have no money to pay back their loans. And the banks are overloaning people. And so when the stock market crashes, everyone runs to their bank to get their savings, which isn't a ton. And the banks are like, we don't have your money. So what banks do with your savings is they loan it out to other people, hoping to make a profit. When those people pay it back, you charge them interest. That's like the business of a bank. And so that caused even more issues. Also, the global economy. All right, the global economy. When global means interconnected. So what happens is the stock market crashed in America, and then America does all these protective things. They put up tariffs to incentivize people to buy American-made goods. Well, that hurts Britain. That hurts whoever America trades with a lot. And Britain's not happy about that, so they put up tariffs. So it really backfires. If you collaborate to help get through something, you'll probably get through it quicker. But that's not the knee-jerk reaction. Normally, when something terrible goes wrong, you just look inward and you try to do everything for yourself, in your own self-interest, even if it means hurting somebody else when you're already hurt. And usually that just results in a chain reaction of bad economic decisions, and one bad situation will just get worse. Oh yeah, and the United States, they'd been loaning Germany so many loans in the Dawes Act, if you recall. And now the United States is looking at Germany, hey, when you're going to pay us back for all those loans, Germany's going to get hit specifically hard because the United States is having a problem Now Germany has no more loans. Germany is being pressured to pay back extremely fast, which they weren't expecting to do. So it's going to have an effect on other economies very quickly. So the stock market crash happened in, I believe, October. Yes, October 29th, 1929. At the very end, up until this time period, we call the 1920s the Roaring Twenties, the Jazz Age. It's where all the girls are dancing in their short dresses, and they were called the Flappers. It's the Great Gatsby era, where there's cars and there's automobiles and there's still a lot of inequality. Let's not forget that not everyone is included in this big surge of progress and wealth after World War One, specifically African Americans. But for the middle class, at least, that's what we think of in the 1920s. We think of the Great Gatsby era, where people are just making so much money on Wall Street with borrowed money. They're betting borrowed money. That means margin. Make sure you write down margin, M-A-R-G-I-N. Borrowed money to buy stocks. And when the stock market crashes and all of these, it means so many people are trying to sell their stocks at one time and no one's buying the stocks. So all of this money that they invested literally just disappeared in the blink of an eye within 1 to 2 days. And everyone runs to their banks. The banks have loaned out too much money. There's not enough more money in people's savings accounts. And it's going to lead to a worldwide depression. So some people say that the stock market crash was the beginning of the depression. Other historians will say the stock market crash was a symptom of the Great Depression. It was kind of already coming and no one saw it coming. But it was a symptom of this overproduction of banks giving out too many loans and too much credit. But Germany, like we said before, is going to be hit specifically hard. The United States and Germany. Because the United States is going to stop loaning money and it's going to call in Germany to pay their debts much more quickly. And Germany is going to lose faith in their democratic government and slowly turn to the National Socialistic Workers' Party, called the Nazi Party later, which we'll talk about next class. So the impact of the Great Depression. High unemployment. Whoops. 1 second. All right. Let's see. The impact of the Great Depression. When we talk about high unemployment, we mean 20 to 25% of people are unemployed. So these are breadlines. These are people who were making a lot of money before. They were not a lower class at all. And now so many people don't have enough food. And the people who are still employed, 75%, their hours are cut. They're not making nearly as much as before. Their wages are cut. So normally unemployment sits around Normally unemployment sits around 3 to 4%. When the economy is going well, there's only about 3 to 4% of people in the United States looking for a job, not able to get a job. You guys lived through the pandemic. That was really interesting. A lot of people were laid off, specifically, like I had a couple friends. They weren't completely laid off, but their hours were cut significantly. Or they were furloughed, like a lot of people in the hotel industry and in the restaurants, they were laid off. Not so much teachers, because, we were still teaching at home. And anyone who was able to do their job at home and have access to Wi-Fi, they were okay. But still, that's a lot of people in the service industry, that there's no more demand for this, and so they were just out of a job. A lot of people stopped buying a lot of things, such as restaurants. They kind of closed down. So all these farmers who were growing all these onions to send to the restaurants, no one's buying them. They just have to waste them. They were losing so much money. You can't just stop producing onions. The onions are practically ready to be harvested at this point. They've been growing for months. So it's kind of like a cycle that you can't stop, right? Let's see. People are fired when the stock market crashes. Now the stock market, all these businesses don't have that capital they can use to reinvest in their business. People are going to get fired. Then people have less money, right? And then people don't buy as much when you don't have as much money. And then prices drop to get people to buy more things. And then people are still not buying the stuff, so people don't want to overproduce, because if they overproduce, then it's just going to go to waste, and that hurts the supplier. And then more people are going to be fired. So just think about it from this perspective. Like, people stop going to restaurants, you don't need as many people. You're going to fire some workers. Those workers are also consumers. They have less money. They're not going to go out to eat and give someone else business. They're not going to go and buy as much at the grocery store if they can't afford it because they don't have a job or they have less money. And so it's this big cycle, and then more people are going to be laid off. We're going to see bank failures take place. They loaned out too much money, and now everyone has run to their bank to get what they can, and now the bank has no money. We're going to see tariffs. Tariff is a tax, write it down, a tax on foreign goods. So the American government wanted Americans to buy American-made products to help our economy. But if you do that, every country that trades with America is not going to be happy with America. They lose American business. It's going to cause unemployment over there. And so tariffs was a really big mistake. It made the Great Depression so much worse because everyone put up tariffs against American-made goods. And the prices, they're going to drop so much in international trade. And when prices drop, you can't make as much money. So you're not going to produce as much. And then more people are going to get fired. It's the same thing. Prices, they're going to drop everywhere. So in the beginning of this, I told you democracies were going up right after the end of World War I. But now democracies after the Great Depression are going to decrease. People are going to feel like, hey, maybe these democratic governments don't have it right. They could not predict this. They could not prevent this. And they are doing the best they can to recover from this time period, but it's slow recovery. It's very slow. And so people are like, how about we just turn to a dictator that we're used to. We're used to kings and queens who can centralize the economy and kind of tell you exactly what to do and take away your freedoms, but make everyone do what we want them to do, and it'll help us recover. And that's what a lot of Eastern European countries do, including Germany and Austria, the Central European countries. They're going to turn more to fascism and more to dictators. And we're going to learn about this one guy, Keynes, this is how you pronounce his name. He believes that if you increase government spending, he's an economist, if you increase government spending, people will have more money, then they'll spend it, and then they'll create more jobs, and then you can reverse the cycle. So if you guys remember back to the pandemic, remember the stimulus checks? That was so wonderful. It was like, yes. Where was that money coming from? That was coming from the government. The idea was if you give people $2,000 who are making less than this, like I qualified, but if your parents are already rich, they didn't get any, or they got very little. But it was like, if you give me some money, I will spend that money on, restaurants and things like that. And I'll help keep other businesses flowing. If I have no money, I'm going to stop spending as much as I possibly can. And I'm not going to give my business to anyone. And that's going to hurt the businesses. And the business is going to have to fire some more people. And it's a chain reaction. So what we're going to see is these democratic governments increase government spending. They'll pay back the debt later, from wherever they borrow the money for all of this. But we're going to see FDR, our president, just put people to work, throw money at them, essentially. Like, you have to create national parks. Do we need national parks during the Great Depression? Absolutely not. But is it an excuse to pay somebody to do something? Yes. They're going to hire librarians. They're going to hire people to build bridges and infrastructure. They're going to come up with the idea of Social Security and give people money once they reach a certain age and can't work anymore. Because the more you do that, the more you support business. So if the government, that's Keynes' theory, government spends more money, people will have more money to spend, and then it will create more jobs and things like that. Is that it? Oh, that's it. Okay. Well, that's it. Make sure if you missed any of that, you go back and you take some notes. But the next lesson is going to be on kind of the totalitarian governments of World War One, or sorry, of World War Two, and then we'll get into World War Two. All right. Thanks so much for watching. Thank you. Bye bye.